couple of armchair GMs who have yet to be wrong with any of their Timberwolves takes. Right. It's Flagrant Howls with Phil Mackey and Kyle Theige.
Oh, thank you, everyone. Yes, thank you. Oh, wow. No, sit down, everyone. Sit down. This is your favorite Timberwolves lifestyle podcast where we just want the Timberwolves to win 50 games for the first time in almost 20 years. Thinking about changing it to 60 after watching yet another great Timberwolves preseason game, Kyle, in which the Lakers thought, you know what? Let's run our A lineup out there against the Timberwolves B- lineup without the target centers. And let's get a feel-good preseason game out here and make these guys look like clowns. And ultimately, it was the Timberwolves that got the best of the Lakers last night. We haven't seen Gobert and Cat together on the floor yet, so that's a thing we can talk about. But there's another Luka in the NBA to take note of, I think, as of last night. So let's start with Lakers, Wolves observations, Wolves preseason. We can get to a million other things, too, on the show today.
There were three big guys that played a lot of minutes in that Wolves-Timberwolves game: Luka Garza, Naz Reid, and Anthony Davis. And Anthony Davis was the worst of those three players. Couldn't shoot.
How about it?
Couldn't really defend. Luka Garza, I mean, listen, a preseason game, West Coast, for a lot of the listeners, that's a late thing. I was having a glass of wine or six last night, and the fourth quarter was all Luka Garza and Floyd Money Mayweather. Luka Garza was hitting these step-back threes and then turning and talking just a crazy amount of smack to Floyd Mayweather. And then after the game, the Wolves posted this on IG, like, they were dapping it up. Like, I don't know if he cost Floyd a bunch of money, but, I mean, think about waking up and seeing headlines like Luka Garza defeats Floyd Mayweather's Los Angeles Lakers. Like, I thought I was high. So, yeah,
if Floyd has another fight, you know, Floyd likes to bring celebrities in his entourage, like Triple H. I want to see Luka Garza holding the title up above Floyd Mayweather's head the next time he puts together some sort of stunt exhibition match.
And you know, all jokes aside, like, he looks good. I caught myself last night thinking, like, okay, once they get the target centers back, there's not going to be a ton of minutes in that kind of front court. And how was Naz Reid, who, by the way, was the man of the match last night. Like, Naz Reid just went at guys. He was awesome. I think he had like 20 and 10 at half. But they have a lot of guys that can do stuff. And I mean, Luka Garza is probably going to spend a lot of time in Iowa, but they just continue to churn out this development process with these big guys, which, again, we'll get into this at some point today or through the season. I don't think Carl and Rudy are going to play 82 games, but if you can just go to Naz or go to Luka, like the new Luka, that's pretty special for Finch. And Finch really loves Garza, so I think it's going to be something to monitor.
Yeah, I think, man, there's like legitimate crunching at the end of this roster too, right? There's going to be guys that either are in Iowa or don't get any minutes that you look and say, man, I wish that guy would get some. Could you find 8 minutes for that guy?
Right.
But they have a deep team, man.
Like, and we've said, you and I have been on this island, like, they're the deepest team they've ever had. We're going to talk about this in a little bit, but like, I get a little nervous about being too deep because you can have that situation where you have too many guys, and that'll play into, like, do they do some of these guys a favor? They have a very player-focused front office now that loves to, like, do right by players, and that might come into a situation where maybe you trade a guy just to let him, go spread his wings somewhere else because you have so much depth.
I think we're going to snapshot this for later for aggregation if the Wolves get off to a slow start or underachieve, that Kyle said the Wolves have too much talent. They are too deep. It might have a negative impact at some point on the organization.
I think I tweeted out last night, like, trade everyone and just build around Luka Garza. Like, you get all your picks back and just let that guy run the show. He's like a weird, like, Midwestern Iowa version of Kevin Love. And he's big. Like, he's a big guy, and I didn't know he could shoot like that. And
I didn't either.
Letting it rain. So, and again, as fun as Luka was, like, Naz Reid, like, again, you said the Lakers played their real guys, not their accountants like they did in Vegas. And Naz Reid just went at those guys. I always joke Naz was undrafted from LSU, came into the league, and couldn't jump over the free throw line. Like that, not from it, but over it. He just had no athleticism. He was kind of a chubby kid. He is so competitive. He is the guy that during those lean years, like, hated losing the most. And he's put so much work in. Like, I don't know if he can play power forward, but I think Finch is going to have him try and see if he can play next to Rudy, play next to Carl. the Naz Reid story is like one of the coolest stories I've remembered.
And it's also, and Naz Reid was sort of old regime, but you know, Tim Connolly has been known for finding gems, Naz Reid type players, second round or undrafted. And this might dovetail into, I saw 2 more instances in the last like 48 hours of Rudy Gobert trade hand-wringing across the internet. Just we're right back to July where all the national talking heads and John Hollinger had a piece on The Athletic, and then some guy with a big YouTube audience was tweeting out things last night. You and I both retweeted him like, this might be one of the worst trades. Even if the Wolves win 50, it might be one of the worst trades in NBA history. What are you going to do without first round? It's like, okay, can we stop pretending like the Wolves have zero opportunity to reacquire first round picks? So tell me if I'm crazy here, but let's say they decide in a year from now, oh man, you know what? This whole target centers thing, maybe we were a little overzealous, which I don't think is going to happen. But we got to find a way to recoup some value down the road so that Anthony Edwards doesn't have barren cupboards when he emerges into his prime. Right now, in the next year, you could trade Karl Anthony Towns for multiple first-round picks. You could still trade Rudy Gobert, not for the same haul you gave up to get him, but for a first-round pick or 2 or multiple. I think a team would trade a first-round pick for Jaden McDaniels right now, let alone the version of him that would be available like in a year if you didn't want to sign him to a contract. I think a team in a year from now would trade a first-round pick for Jaylen Nowell. Like, I'm so sick of the Rudy Gobert trade slander because, oh my gosh, what are they going to do in 2020? It's like, they'll figure it out, I guess, in 5 years. People are just saying, well, now you're screwed. This is the move. This is the only move you can make for 10 years now. You've dug your grave if this doesn't work.
My wife prefers when I just don't get into it online with people because then it leaks out into the living room and the kitchen. I'm just crabby. So
my wife doesn't choose to say, don't tweet. Don't tweet.
I know if there was a way for my wife to review my tweets before. So I try not to engage. But yeah, there was just this bumsicle online that I think the tweet was the Wolves could win 50 games and it could still be the worst trade of all time. It's literally just like, that's not a functional thing that's real. Because, again, they've won 50 games, 4 times in 33 seasons?
Yeah.
As you had Doogie on, I know earlier today, like the bar is just above the floor. Like it's not even, there's no space. The bar to this team to have success is so low. And like you said, you can then make the, like, let me put this another way. Would you have traded your 2023 unprotected first-round pick, so you don't get a draft pick next year, to get Rudy Gobert this season and try to win 50 games? And if that's a yes, and you win 50 games, that pick is already going to be 24, 25. Mm-hmm. So if you're just doing that on a one-year basis after this year, and you're like, you know what, we won 50 games, but, Rudy just didn't vibe with the guys, then you just pivot and you go get 80 cents on the dollar, but you've already had a 50-win season. Like, you've already...
Yes.
This isn't a... I don't really actually agree with, like, Hollinger said it too, like, they don't have picks for the next decade. That's not...
They do have
You're
picks.
A reporter. Like, that's not true. They just don't have a pick next year. But then 2024, they can go get a guy. They can go draft LeBron's son. Like, they can do stuff. So, yes. And I was on Cooper Carlson's thing yesterday, and I got into a screaming thing because I was freaking out. But, like, Hollinger's
Were you yelling at Cooper?
No, he just got me riled up in a good way. I was just... The Hollinger was like, they might have all this talent and they're going to win 50 games, but they don't have any picks to go out and trade for an all-star. And it's like, yeah, because they just did it. They just used all those picks.
Right.
Like, why do they need more picks to go get an all-star? They just did that.
Where is the market of people that are like, oh, but how are they going to acquire another all-star? It's like,
my analogy was so piss poor, but it was just kind of like they finally, after saving up, went and got a house. And now they have a mortgage.
But how are you going to go buy a house now?
And the critics are like, well, how are you going to get another house? It's like, why do we need another house? I have a house. I have a mortgage.
What happens if you don't like that house? Then you sell it.
Yeah, it's not like we don't need to be galaxy brain because we've worked in the front office for 6 months and we didn't do very well, like Hollinger. Like, this is good. Yes. This is going to be okay. Snap. If this doesn't work, you then trade the player. It's the Family Guy mystery box or the boat. They have boats. Then you trade the boat. Yes, when you buy a boat, it's now worth 90%. But, like, go trade the boat next year, the French boat, to a team that wants a French boat, and you'll get 80% of your value back. Like, it's not that hard because also there is an iteration of all of this with how good the West is and how good the East is and how competitive everything is, where the Wolves just roll it over again and finish like 11th. Like everyone, even inside that team, knows they kind of overachieved last year. They were gritty, they were tough, but that just doesn't, after a while, that gets figured out. Like, the NBA more than anything, more than the NFL, more than baseball, like the NBA is about talent. You just win off talent. Daryl Morey has made that his life's vision to just, I'm going to go get the all-star, and then I'll do some weird shit behind the scenes to fill in the roster. That's what Tim Connolly's doing. He's got all the boats, and if he needs to go pivot to get, a condo, he'll go get a condo. But anyway, sorry, that was
also. But here's the other thing too. It's like, okay, you're Tim Connolly, and you are widely regarded as one of the brighter, let's say one of the 5 or 6 like top coveted front office executives. You've built some great things in Denver, and it cost the Wolves double your salary to pull you from that job. He is a highly coveted, well-received. Is he Godfather Pat Riley? No, but has he won a championship? No, but he is highly respected. He presumably knows what he's doing to start with. Then he takes this job, and he comes in, and he has a half a decade really to play with here. He's got Anthony Edwards is still like 4 or 5 years away from whatever peak version he will be. You have an ironclad contract. He didn't have to come in here and really do anything this offseason, because you could have just kind of ran it back. Like you said, maybe you're battling for a play-in spot again. And then you just let these contracts delow. You just let money come off the books, and you're wide open for next summer. He could have done that. He had no pressure on him to make a huge splash move. And so a smart new president of basketball operations comes in here and says, not only is this not too much to give up, but this is a stupid move if we don't do it, basically. Like, we should do this. So I guess from that perspective, I tend to trust his judgment, knowing that he wasn't forced into he made the move willfully. He's a smart, well-coveted guy who runs, a basketball front office. I'm, to this point, unless he proves otherwise, I am trusting his judgment on this over random guy on Twitter or, all due respect, John Hollinger, I guess, on the Athletics website.
And I have always had a bone to pick with Hollinger, but he is a smart, he was everywhere in Vegas where I was in Vegas, but he also has always kind of had this reason to just dump on the Wolves. And the funny part about all this, again, and this is my biggest gripe about the NBA versus how the NFL is covered, the Wolves were just shit on about this trade, and it happened again on this random YouTuber. If they just ran it back and they struggled and they went 35-40, whatever that number is to equal to, come February, there would be a bunch of stories about, they haven't really been able to build a winner around Ant, and he's up for a contract extension this summer. Like, is he going to want out? So,
yes.
Again, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't if you're Minnesota, and I've embraced that now, but that's why every now and then, I was going to look this up before this. I didn't have time, but I think you were the first person to put it out there, so I need to credit you, but it's elaborate. The Minnesota Timberwolves fan base is Eminem from 8 Mile. That is like I think that was your take. Like, they are at the end, they just say all the bad stuff about themselves before anyone else online can say it, because we've been through the mud. Like, there's nothing you can say about us that we don't already know. So we're the scariest franchise fan base in the league because there's nothing left to say. We know we missed on Curry. We know we gave Joe Smith money under the table. We know David Kahn. We know Kurt Rambis. Like, there's nothing else you can say. So to come out and be like, you guys could win 50 games and still be a joke, it's like, nope, that's not true. And I think that guy had a nice 100 quote tweets, so I'm sure he loved the engagement. But you can't say things that aren't true anymore. I'm coming this summer.
I think fall. I love it, dude. I love Fired Up Kyle right now.
Yeah, no, I need
going
to
after random strangers on the internet.
Going after random YouTubers. By the way, subscribe to Flagrant Howls on YouTube.
Yes, please click the subscribe button so we can get as many subscribers on the Score North YouTube channel as that guy has. Yes. Let's also get to this here, and we'll get to Write That Down predictions, which is a staple on Mackey and Judd and on Purple Daily. And I don't think we're going to do it weekly on Flagrant Howls, but we definitely need a preseason edition of Write That Down predictions so we can go on the record with some stuff here. But the Pat Bev podcast debuted. I believe is that Barstool?
I think so. Yeah, it's with Roan. So Pat got, I think, a good amount of money to do a basketball-related podcast over on that website. And the first episode dropped. And say what you want about Pat Bev, but that's the guy that you would want to start a podcast with because he's already said everything he's thought. And I think, what was the thing he said yesterday?
Well, I'm going to read these Finch quotes. Is that what you're referring to here?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
So I'm getting these from our guy Joe Nelson at Bring Me the News, who transcribed this. I haven't actually listened to the podcast yet, but he admitted, Pat Bev, that he was angered that Timberwolves head coach Chris Finch wasn't the first person to call and tell him he'd been traded to the Jazz in a blockbuster deal. Quote, "When I get the call for the trade, I feel like that call should have come from the coach. That's where my anger came from. Not 8 hours later or 7 hours later when the dust is starting to clear. Easily motivated, Beverley has found more fuel and plans to use it to smoke the Timberwolves if he gets to play them in the playoffs." He said, quote, "I respect that more. Just be real, especially when we have that type of relationship. That was my only issue, not getting the call from Finch right away. But that's all I need now to play them in the playoffs and smoke their ass. That's all I needed, just that little bit." What are your thoughts on Pat Bev getting a little bulletin board material here from Chris Finch?
So I had heard that on the other side. When we were in Vegas, like talking to Finch pregame and stuff, like because they're playing the Lakers obviously last Wednesday, even though Pat Bev didn't play, or last Thursday. But they asked about Pat's influence on the team, and Finch was very complimentary, and he said like, that dude should be borderline jersey retired because he came in with a bunch of young guys and he told those young guys like, you can make the playoffs, and they believed in him. So he had nothing but good things to say. But he also said that like, I don't think I've talked to Pat since the trade. So I think Pat was mad. I think Pat is also, we know this, like looking for reasons to be pissed off and be motivated. That's how he's made his millions, and it's kind of how I live my life too, just constantly being petty about people who accidentally cut you off in traffic. So
I do the same thing, actually.
See, and it's like they might even have the worst day ever, but it's like, oh, they went after me, so now I'm pissed off. So I get it. I like it.
I'm gonna road rage them into the ditch.
And I wonder too, Pat is like really smart, and I wonder if he's already needing to start to kind of inflate the petty meter and just get pissed off because, as again we saw last night, like there was this viral scene where he was trying to huddle up the guys because the Wolves, by the way, just spanked them, but he's trying to huddle up the guys and like Westbrook wouldn't come in the huddle. And I think Pat has made the playoffs everywhere he's gone, and when he said it last year, we made fun of him, and he did it. But this is the hardest case he's ever had. Good luck trying to get that Lakers team into the playoffs because, back to a basketball conversation, the talent difference between the Lakers bench and the Wolves bench, like that gap is wider than like Anthony Davis's unibrow. Like that team, those two teams have different benches. One of them is a NBA bench and the other one is a G League bench, and it's going to be tough for Pat to keep that streak going. So he's taking shots. It's what he does. He's going to be great as a podcast. Maybe we can get him on here. But I know he was not happy about how the trade went down.
And I would expect that from him. I was just trying to think of, is there any way that you could trade him, just when the trade happened? Is there any way that he's not going to be chapped? How would it how would it have to have gone down for him to not be chapped? And there was really, he was going to find something, like whether it was
100%
Jimmy Butler, just like, and he already kind of did the old, like, he did take because we did an episode 2 or 3 weeks ago. He took a little shot on Twitter at like inexperienced guys or guys who don't work hard or something. But I hope fans don't, because Minnesota sports fans, we do this thing sometimes where a player will come back, like AJ Przinsky, like a surly player will come back, and we will boo that player for absolutely no reason whatsoever. AJ Przinsky is the prime example. He was a really good Twins player for, 5 years in the early 2000s, late 90s. He helped the Twins get to the playoffs for the first time in a decade. He was part of that resurgent team, 2001, 2, and 3. And then they traded him to the Giants for a boatload of players, including Francisco Liriano and Joe Nathan. Same thing for Bev. You're trading him not for a boatload of players, but you're trading him for Rudy Gobert.
Yep.
So he helps your team. He adds some grit to your team and some leadership to your team, and then you leverage him for something better. He should be celebrated. I've always said AJ Przinsky should have been celebrated by Twins fans. I hope fans celebrate Pat Bev, even if he's been a little cantankerous here in some of his comments. When he steps foot inside Target Center, I would expect a standing ovation that makes him uncomfortable. That's what I want to see.
Yep, and I think Pat, again, to my point that he's really smart, he has taken a subtle shot at Finch. Finch, understands it and welcomes it. Finch could have called him 2 minutes after the trade went down, and Pat would be like, he called me 120 seconds after the trade. Like Pat would be pissed about something. So,
Yeah.
But it was, a subtle shot at the coach and how that went down, and then a subtle shot at something that we don't have answered yet. Like, I don't know if after a year of the Pat Bev academy of grittiness and toughness and leadership, like maybe Ant is grittier. Maybe Carl is a better leader. But prior to Pat being here, like they didn't have that stuff. And now Pat's gone, and did they take some of those things? So we don't know. So I don't think anything Pat has said has been wrong. But he also has been very adamant to not like take shots at the fan base or the, you know what I mean? Like he has been, I don't know, he quote tweeted me one day and was like, love gang. Like he loves his thing here. He was very cognizant of all the people that wore I Love Pat Bev shirts in the crowd during the playoffs. So, yeah, I do though. I really, that's a great point. I think when he is back, he should be showered. And I think they will. Fans here are really smart. I mean, Wolves fans get it. Like they'll give that guy his flowers because his number 22 should be retired in the rafters far better than Wiggins' number 22 because that guy did a lot more for this team in 1 year than Wiggs did in 6 or 7.
We got to get KG's number up there first before anything, which is a whole nother
Don't get me started.
podcasting topic.
Maybe January 2025 once Glenn is his parking spot has been removed and he gives the keys to A-Rod.
He's going to want Glenn. The next thing is Glenn has to be moved outside of the. Once Glenn retires to like Naples officially, then Kevin Garnett will step foot back in.
Yeah, he's going to glue Glenn to the floor just like all the people did against Glenn, and then he'll step on Glenn to go raise his. But yeah,
that's what those women were protesting. They were protesting Kevin Garnett's number not being raised in the rafters yet at Target Center.
Should have been on the floor with him. No, so yeah, Pat Bev, give him his flowers.
I'm looking at right now. I'm on VegasInsider.com, looking at the latest NBA win totals here.
Oh, okay.
And this is from this morning.
Okay.
Actually, this was posted like a half hour ago. So they've updated these off of whatever the latest information is. And right now, here are your Western Conference over/under totals. Phoenix 52.5, tied with the Clippers. The Warriors at 51.5. And then the Nuggets at 49.5. So that's your top 4 teams.
Crap.
And then 3 Western Conference teams tied at 48.5, tied for 5th. The Grizzlies, the Mavericks, and the Timberwolves. And so they're all tied for 5th through 7th. Mm-hmm. And then the Lakers they're the next spot at 45.5, just ahead of the Pelicans. So a couple questions off this. I guess my first one is, do you really think there's only a 3-win gap between the Timberwolves and the Lakers at the end of the day? This feels like Lakers inflation, like optimism, LeBron, healthy, this or that. And, Timberwolves being the Timberwolves and the negativity surrounding the Target centers. Can they play together? It's like a lot of perceptions maybe dragging Wolves down, Lakers up. Another thing that people don't consider enough is I know he's been a cyborg for 20 years in the NBA, but at some point, LeBron James is almost 40.
And if you go look at his basketball reference page, he's actually played less games like every year than like these last couple of years than you think. Like he's already starting to, whether it be breaking down or just maintaining his body. Like I think in 21-22 he played 56 games, right? And now Classic, like they were kind of out of the picture and didn't want to be in the playing game. And there's COVID years in this too, but it's like 56 games, 45, 67, 52. Like he's not going to give you 70 games. So just to answer your question. And what I saw last night, I know preseason is so meaningless. There are no Carl, there is no Rudy. But I kind of thought last night's game was like actually super meaningful because you saw again the same topic Phil and I have been on since July. This team is so deep, and they don't even have to have. I'm not a big baseball guy, but like, they don't have to have their fastball or their slider. Like they can just.
That was a great baseball metaphor there, right there.
You know what I mean? Like they can just come at you with. They did last night. Oh, we're just gonna give a Naz Reid, Luka Garza front court.
We're going to throw knuckleballs.
Right, yeah, exactly. And we're just still going to win. I mean, because that's the thing last night. Like, Pat Bev was in that game in the fourth quarter for a reason. Like, he was trying to go full Jimmy Butler and take these third stringers to beat the Wolves. And I don't know if that was, like, Darvin Ham's attempt to kind of just put some juice into I mean, Lakers fans were all in the building, so they didn't leave. But the Wolves took every punch that the main Lakers team could throw at them. And without their probably two of the 3 best guys, like, they won the game. I mean, D'Lo looked about as athletic and as engaged as I've ever seen him last night. He was going at Pat. So, yeah, insane. There's no way that's a 3-win gap. Like, if the Lakers is 45.5, that's almost a better under than the Wolves is an over, and I would bet my life on the over for the
Yeah.
Wolves.
What about your thoughts just generally on the Wolves being kind of in that mix between, they're basically tied with 3 other teams for 5th, 6th, 7th going into the season in the West?
I think it's probably right. I mean, I have massive. I kind of like the Clippers more than anyone. Obviously, I love the Wolves, but like if I had to pick a team to win out of the West, it'd be the Clippers. I just think they have like 26 forward / guards that they can just, when they really want to play defense, they can play defense. And Ty Lue is one of the best coaches in the league, so that seems right. The Warriors have so many young guys as well. They're going to win a bunch of games, even if Draymond's trying to punch them all. And then the Suns will be the outlier, right? Like, vibes matter, and if the vibes of that team with their ownership thing and Ayton, like, they could fall. But yeah, I think the Wolves, Mavs, and Grizzlies are all tied together in October. But I think the Wolves have more bench players than maybe those other 2 teams combined. And I think I would, again, bet my life. Like, I think the Wolves have a much better chance to finish higher than the Mavs, because the Mavs have one thing, and if that thing goes away, Luka, they have nothing else. They don't have Brunson anymore. The Wolves, we just saw it. No Carl, no Rudy. All right, whatever. We'll play these other guys, and we'll beat the Lakers. So no Ant, cool, put Jaylen in. No Jaden, TP, Kyle Anderson, all these guys. So depth is going to play a big part in hitting that over.
I'm with you on the Clippers. I mean, just the fact that the Clippers a couple years ago made that crazy run with, their backups basically, and then you just plop these all NBA players back in if they can stay healthy. That's a dangerous team. I think teams that are around or above the Wolves on the over-unders that I would look at maybe falling or the Wolves passing. The Suns. How often can you keep banging your head against the wall when you came that close 2 years ago and then you get bounced? I think it was in the second round this last year. And Chris Paul continues to, I mean, at the end of these last 2 seasons, he has looked every bit his age and then some. And there's been some injury things. He had a hand at one point. But, the Suns, and you're right, like, just the vibes of the organization, some just feels a little bit off. I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs or anything, but I don't know that I would put them as the over-under win total favorite in the West right now. The Mavericks are just being held up by Luka. So, and you already kind of mentioned that. So basically, can the star power of that one incredible generational player trump maybe the depth of Timberwolves or depth of Nuggets or other teams? And I mean, the answer has been yes in a lot of cases the last couple of years with the Mavericks. Teams behind the Wolves in the over-under preseason win totals that make me a little nervous. The Pelicans for sure, if healthy.
Yep, that's the number one.
Loaded, right? I mean, they're 44.5 right now, but if you think they're going to be healthy, it's a guaranteed over. And then I would say maybe the Blazers. Just it depends on what version of does Dame still have a couple years left of Dame time, or has he been such a high usage player for like 11 years that it's going to be like Allen Iverson in his early 30s where he's just not. After a couple injuries, he's not the same guy. Maybe the Kings, but I still think they're a couple years away and have some tweaking to do. But they can be kind of sneaky sometimes.
Being out here in the Pacific Northwest, a lot of Blazers talk too. Like, I think, again, if you just go, a simple thing if you're trying to bet the over or the under or just look into any of these futures is that just go Google a team name and depth chart. Like the Blazers, for example, like their backup center is Drew Eubanks, who like went to school with my wife at Oregon State. Like, good guy, solid basketball player, not as good as Luka Garza. So just think about that. Like, that's their backup center. Luka Garza is the Timberwolves' 9th center. Like, these teams just don't have a lot of depth. And I don't like the Mavs too. Like, look at their second unit. Like, it's just the Wolves have a second unit of guys that could all start for like OKC. So it's just that depth is going to play a big factor. And Dame hasn't always been the healthiest. And like you said, it's all tied into one guy in Luka, who is still, the better player of anyone on the Wolves. But behind him, it's like those drafts. Okay, you take Luka 1. Well, I'm going to take 6 Timberwolves 2 through 7. So again, this all just comes back into I think the Wolves are going to win a lot of games and be a top 4 or 5 seed, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should take some of these projections and put them on the record here. Maybe we should put them under the Write That Down umbrella.
Write that down.
Which is
write it down. You like writing things down.
A segment you can find if you're new to Score North. Maybe Flagrant Howls was your window into Score North here. So on Mackey and Judd for about 7 years, every single week, we are the only show in America to put statistics next to our predictions, so you can see just how wrong we are on a regular basis. We also do a football version on Purple Daily. I don't believe this is going to be weekly for us yet, but let's start with just going on the record. Let's make at least 3 Timberwolves or NBA-related predictions each that we can track and not sweep under the rug later in the season. And I'll give you the floor first here.
This is a
you
big
want to
moment
lead
for
off,
me
man.
as a big Score North guy. I kind of have a 3 Little Bears, like cold, medium, and hot take-ish. We've kind of already talked about some of this, but my first write it down as part of the team. We've said it before. The Wolves will win 50 games.
Okay.
I'm looking at my notes here. They haven't done it since 2003, 2004. That's always the year we reference. 4 times in 33 seasons. They haven't gone back-to-back playoff years since 03, 04. This is the most talented team. This is the deepest team. They might have the best coach the team's ever had. And I think between watching that French 18-year-old in Vegas and seeing how many teams are going to just literally kidnap their star players come February, those are going to be free wins in March and April, and just how much talent this team has and the beginning schedule, they're just going to win. They're going to. Like, I'm so confident that I'm starting to have anxiety attacks. Like, they're going to win 50 games. I bet over 48.5 in Vegas. I bet it online. If you want to make a dinner bet with me on the side, hit me up on Twitter. But yeah, I think this is a 50-win team, and that is, contrary to the haters, like, that is a big milestone for this team, and that would be the first step that says the Gobert trade was an overpay, but a successful overpay.
So you mentioned their schedule to start the season.
Oh, boy. Ooh.
I almost wish they played some harder games so that you wouldn't. There's almost pressure to like. So here's the games: you play Oklahoma City and Utah at home, 2 rebuilding teams. There's some Oklahoma City scares me a little bit more. I think Utah is just going to be the Malik Beasley show, which should be fun to watch.
That'll be a fun show.
Oklahoma City again on the road, then a home and home, but both at home, I guess, against San Antonio. So San Antonio. And then home against the Lakers, and then at San Antonio. So your first 7 games are against non-playoff teams, likely, and the Lakers at home. You should. I hate to say you should go 7-0 because it's the NBA, but like, is there a record that you would, if they went 5-2, would you be disappointed?
No, but the point you're trying to make is something I was thinking too when the schedule
There's
came
pressure,
out,
man.
So in August, when I saw the schedule, I was like, oh, everyone is so excited about this, but don't you want to play those teams more towards the back half when, like, Phil is starting at point guard, or like you and I are getting minutes? But then as we've navigated into this, we still, as of Thursday, haven't seen Carl and Rudy play together. Now I've pivoted back to, like, I think I want them to start with easy games because we've seen the depth, like the Wolves did against the Lakers. They can just put other guys out there and win those games. Like, if Carl doesn't play in the home opener, cool, play Naz Reid and he'll get 20 and 10. So I used to be concerned about that. I'm like, maybe it'd be nice to play like good teams so that if they do lose, it's not a big deal. But now I'm back on, they have no reps between those 2 guys in live minutes. So it might be nice to get those live reps in meaningful games.
You can play something far less than perfect basketball and still win these games by.
You can play Carl 20
points.
minutes against the Thunder without Chet. Who knows what they do with SG? And then you can still go win the game. So 5-2 would be fine. I also think even with an easy schedule, they're so good they're going to beat good teams that if it's 4-3, like, just again, let's just all take a deep breath and, like, on Christmas we'll all get together and then we'll freak out if they're 500.
If they only start 4-3, I may call for Chris Finch's head. I just want to throw that out there so people aren't shocked.
This is going to get good. Okay, that's fair.
Then they also get so after that stretch of 7 games, they play at Phoenix and then home against Milwaukee. Those are both nationally televised games on TNT and ESPN. But then you come home against Houston, home against the Knicks, who whiffed on everything they were trying to do seemingly before they landed Brunson, I guess. And then you get Phoenix, Memphis, Cleveland, Orlando, Philadelphia, a bunch of road games. So the schedule picks up like halfway through November. So you have a month basically to get your target centers cohesive. Hate to be this guy, but I'm going to one-up you right now.
Write it down. You like writing things down.
I'm going to go for it.
Write this down.
You said 50+. I'm going to say 55+.
Jeez. Okay, I got to think of something 55 to rhyme. Okay, though, that's fair. I've had people say they're going to win 60. That's aggressive. Just, again, that's a big number. But 55, explain your point. You like the depth or what?
I love the depth, I think, and you've kind of laid this out better than anyone, but there's just going to be a bunch of weird games where Cat has a nagging wrist thing and he's out, or you're going to have starters get hurt. And I just love the fact that Jaylen Nowell could come in and start for you and play 32 minutes, and you would feel comfortable getting shots. Like, it seems like they have a guy behind all of their guys to come in where you wouldn't feel uncomfortable switching up your starting lineup because of injury. So there's a lot of teams in the NBA where if the Mavericks, if Luka goes down, they're probably going to lose a couple games they shouldn't or wouldn't otherwise. I don't know that that's the case with the Timberwolves as much as other teams. I also just think you start at 50 wins with Rudy Gobert. Like, I keep going back to these Jazz teams, and this is such an oversimplification. But, if you look at, I'm going to pull this up on BR here. If you look at those Jazz teams that I don't think had as much talent or depth as this Timberwolves team does.
Correct.
Rudy Gobert on defense and rebounding and blocking shots and altering what opposing teams are trying to do. It was basically guaranteed 48 to 52 wins every year for 5 years, the last 5 years or so. So if that's the baseline for a Rudy Gobert team with some talent around him, what's the baseline for a Rudy Gobert team with more talent around him? It's probably more like 52, 53, 55 wins. That's a drastic oversimplification here, but I just look at the Jazz and I'm like, that was a really good team. This is a more talented team. And they won 50 games almost every year.
I'll give you an even dumber simplification. If this roster, I always think about this in March Madness. They do the blind resume. They put all these stats up on record, and they take the team's logos off it. And you got to figure out who would you think should make the bracket more. If you took this roster and this front office and this coaching staff and you put it in LA, what would the Vegas win total be? It would probably be like 53.5. So there's still that Minnesota scar tissue we talked about, that Minnesota stink as the garbage truck just drives by. Like that is a real thing. So they're just so deep. They're so talented. And I think it's going to be, I think there's a greater than 0% chance that one team forfeits a game in March. That they see Victor Wembanyama again, like, dunk between his legs from the 3-point line. And the Indiana Pacers are like, nope, all our players have monkeypox. Like, we're going to take this game off. So I just think all of that factors in. Easy start, talented team, deep team, and then a free-for-all come February, March, that it's just going to be almost impossible for them to not win games. Dude, last night the Lakers missed like 13 threes in a row and subbed in a guy named Matt Ryan, who I thought was literally from the Colts, and to be their shooter. The Wolves had DNPs of like Taurean Prince. Yeah. Like, these teams are playing guys that you've never heard of, and the Wolves are sitting guys who have like 40 games of playoff experience. So that's my other rant. But yeah, I'm with you. 55 is aggressive, but if they hit that, man, I don't think that's the highest win total, though, is it? Like
50, wasn't it 58? Didn't they have a 0304? But they've never won 60, I don't think.
No.
They've only had the top seed one time. Man, I'll throw it back to you here, but is it the top seed is not a totally out of reach thing if this team peaks and gels the way that it could. If they play at like their 90th percentile as a team.
And this gets me onto the 1 point Hollinger made, by the way.
Jumped the shark here on
No. The one
Hollinger
point
is flowing.
The one Hollinger point that I thought was actually really smart, and this is something you don't want to hear right now, but this team is going to be better in 2023-24. That's
70
yeah,
wins.
like 70 wins. Like this team, there is like chemistry and vibes and stuff like that matters. Again, I used a reference of like when you're a quarterback and you acquire a new wide receiver. Like, it takes time to figure that stuff out. It's going to take time for Rudy and D'Lo to gel because throwing lobs is an art. But I do think that this team is just like, I don't know what the DraftKings odds are or whatever, but if you can go see like them to finish in the regular season, to me, the Rudy Gobert experiment over 4 years, year one is all about regular season wins. And now we might fight about that down the road, but like, I would much rather them win 55 games and then figure it out in the playoffs and how do we make it work, and maybe we lose in 7 and then tweak it next year with a mid-level exception, maybe move this guy. To me, this season is all about winning as many regular season games as possible. Teams will tank harder than ever before. So yeah, if you can get good odds on them to regular season win the West, why is that outlandish? They look good against the Clippers, and they didn't have all their guys.
I'll find some odds for you during your prediction.
Down.
So, all right, back to you for your second prediction.
This, again, a little spicier, but not too much, because if they win 50 games, if they see Phil's mark and they win 55 games, the Wolves will have 2 Western Conference All-Stars in the All-Star game. Last time that happened was 17-18, with Towns and Butler. Again, like every other stat in Wolves lore, it's only happened 4 times in 33 years. It was Garnett and Cassell, and I think Garnett and Gugliotta. And they've never had 3 players make the All-Star team. And so that might even be a spicier take. That would be like a Rudy Carl Ant or Rudy Carl D'Lo. But yeah, they're going to have 2 guys in the All-Star game because they're going to have a top 4 record come, late January, early February.
I swear I'm not. I have these pre-written out here, so I swear I'm not trying to one-up you. But I'm just going to go organically here with my next one.
Write this down.
Write this down. Anthony Edwards will be a starter in the All-Star game this year. A starter. He will be a starter in the All-Star game. I don't know how does that work now? You have like your 10 starters and it's a draft, and then the bench players get filled out.
Yeah, and it's changed every year. And then once the whole country of Japan got Wiggins in, I kind of stopped following it. But yeah, I mean, what you're saying is that I think it would have to be probably him and Luka, or him and like Steph, or maybe they allow one of those guys, to, like him or Luka, to play like the 3 or whatever. But that's not a hot take. You're basically having him jump like what? Jamal Murray.
Yeah, I don't know if they do
Devin
like 3
Booker.
guards, 2 forwards, or how it works. But what I'm banking on is him taking a step forward. And I think his profile nationally too, like he was in a Netflix movie, like he's kind of exploded just in terms of being a household name a lot more too. And I think that will continue. This is a long shot. I'm not saying it's likely. I think this would be classified as a home run level prediction in our official books here. But I think he's just going to become much more of a household name and thus get a lot more votes. So I think he's going to be a starter in the All-Star game. Write it down.
Right,
Write
and I
this
think
down.
we saw that with the Grizzlies last year. They were top 5 in every category for awards: Coach of the Year, Executive of the Year, Most Improved, all that stuff.
You're good. I think it's louder for you than it is for all of us. And it's kind of hilarious.
Just my trash takes coming through, and the garbage man came through. But
it's hilarious that we're trying to provide all this Wolves optimism here on this episode, and the dumpsters are just circling
around my apartment. I think that's a good one. Again, the only pushback I have on that is that I don't know how. I literally don't know as an NBA diehard how the All-Star game is even functioning anymore. But to your point, these awards, all this stuff, it's a lot of stuff decided by writers and media people, and they love a story, they love a narrative. So this 3rd-year growth from this kid from Minnesota taking his team to a top 4 seed, I don't see any reason that he couldn't make it. So maybe he's one of the 2 All-Stars that I predict.
Yeah, could be.
Write it down. You like writing things down.
All right, back to Kyle. Your 3rd and final prediction here.
So this is the spiciest one. It's about as hot take-ish as I can get, and just hear me out on it. But I love a good trade deadline. I love it in baseball. I love it in football, even though it's non-existent, and basketball is really good. But my 3rd one is that the Wolves will be sellers prior to the deadline. And I know that sounds weird because sellers is always a term you use with a team that's like bad or not trying. I know that sounds weird. You don't want to give up a valuable player when you're trying to make this run or whatever, but I do just have this nagging feeling that they have so much talent, and you're going to start to tighten your rotation to 9 guys, and some guy is just not going to play. Like Naz Reid was awesome on ESPN. I'm not sure he's in the rotation all the time. So you have, Jordan McLaughlin, contract eligible next year, Jaylen Nowell, Naz Reid, and you have this front office that has 106 people in it. I do wonder if at some point they're like, we're winning a bunch of games, we have a bunch of players that we can trust, and we have excess guys, like maybe we can get 2 seconds in February for Naz Reid and kind of build back up that war chest that John Hollinger and everyone else is so nervous about not having anything. So it's not a negative thing. It's just I wonder if Tim Connolly is thinking ahead, and they do have a lot of guys. Go look at their salary cap. Like they have a lot of guys that are going to be off the books next year. You don't want all those guys to just disappear. Maybe you re-sign one, D'Lo or Jaylen. But I do wonder if they maybe make a move for a guy that we love, but they're like, let's think long term. Let's go get a future first from a playoff team. Let's go give Naz Reid to the Celtics or something and get a first round pick back. So I know that sounds sad, but it's just I do wonder if they start to kind of look at the long term, like how do we get a little more assets back again to reload?
So to quantify this, just for official bookkeeping purposes, if we said the Timberwolves before the trade deadline, the Timberwolves will trade a current player for a future asset.
Yes, I would say that the before the deadline in mid-February or whatever, the Minnesota Timberwolves will acquire at least 1 second-round pick.
Okay. So we'll say I'll keep it as future asset,
Okay,
meaning
future
like draft picks or something.
Okay.
And then if something weird happens, we can take it to write that down court and go to the write that down jury.
You like writing things down.
All right, my third and final prediction centers around Jaden McDaniels, your guy. So last year, he had one game in which he scored over 20 points. It was home against Utah in a blowout win. This was the night he went 9 for 9 on January 30th. 9 for 9, 22 points, 4 assists, couple rebounds. Not the most dynamic scorer, but he is now doing crossover dribble type things and getting to the rim during these preseason games like he didn't last year. So my prediction is, write this down, Jaden McDaniels will have at least one 30-point game or more in 2022-23.
So
regular season and playoffs, I will include all of it just in case.
So a bonus, write that down. Kyle will get arrested at least once for indecent exposure. I think
You like writing things
I think that's
down?
very possible. I think we've seen, again, Jaden's just not going to be a high usage guy. So to hit that, it's going to probably have to be in a game maybe where Ant's not playing, or just, they need to lean on him a little more against the Kings that night or in a shootout. But you are seeing it's not going to be Ant-like where it's massive leaps and bounds. But again, Jaden last night, not only did Jaden take a couple threes, go to the basket, have a couple and ones, for some reason the Lakers put Westbrook on him, and I literally found myself feeling terrible for Russell Westbrook and his family. Jaden was just attacking him. Like if Jaden McDaniels would have done the rock the baby thing after scoring on Russell Westbrook, I would have showed up to this podcast naked. Like there was a viral moment where like he shoved Westbrook and then took the ball and threw it at him, and then Westbrook threw the ball back at him, and Jaden took the ball and it was a game of dodgeball. It was hilarious. But I think that's a really good one because I think you saw his last game against the Grizzlies. I think it was like a career high points. There's no reason that guy can't score 30. It would take a hot shooting night from 3, but Chris Finch is letting him dribble, and that's like the coolest thing in the world. It's like when you have a young puppy and you finally take it off the leash at the dog park. Finch has let Jaden run around the dog park now without a leash, and that could be really, really good. And it's just another asset that this team has and depth and all that stuff. So I like that. Anytime you talk about Jaden McDaniels, it makes me happy.
What if so I think I'm trying to do the math on what it would take here. So last year, the most field goal attempts he had in a game was he had 18 in a different Utah game. He was 7 of 18, scored 16 points in that one. Otherwise, it's 14, 14, 14. So I think it would have to be a game, like you said, where someone's injured.
Kyle Anderson starts at the 4 for Carl, who's resting on a night. Jaden goes 5 for 8 or 5 for 9 from 3. Gets like 2 and 1, so that's up to like 20. On a couple baskets, like 21. Couple free throws late to close the game when they're trying to hunt 30 for him, and then a couple backdoor dunks. But I don't think it's out of the question. He's going to have to hit a bunch of threes to make that work, though.
Here it is. All right, he's going to go. It's got to be like he's not going to shoot 27 times, so it's got to be like fewer than 20 shots. So it's going to be like 11. If he went, let's say 11 for 17 from the field.
Okay.
And 5 of those were so 5 of 7 from 3. He goes, so that's 15.
Yep.
And then he goes 6 of 10 from 2. So that's another 12. So that's 27.
Yep. Couple
right
free
there.
Throws. Yep.
And then maybe there's an and one, and then a separate trip to the free throw line in which he just knocks them both down, and there's your 30 right there.
Okay. Yeah, no,
there
like that. Actually, Jaylen Nowell would have to miss that game because Jaylen Nowell, man, he just has loved shooting the ball. So if Jalen's out there, there's not going to be enough shots. But no, there's no reason he can't do that. It sounds outlandish, but go look at his game against the Grizzlies. It was very efficient. I think he actually shot like 90% or something crazy. But it just takes a hot shooting night from 3 because now, as I just said, like he's starting to do that thing where he's getting to the rim, he's putting the ball on the deck. Like he can get you those dunks and those kind of backdoor cuts, but he's got to hit his threes. His shot trajectory is higher according to nerds and stats. So yeah, I like that. Anytime we talk about Jaden on this pod, it's a win for everybody.
Yeah, he had 24 points in that playoff game you're talking about. 8 of 9 from the field,
Yep. Okay.
And then 5 of 6 from 3. So it would have to be something like that, but with a few more trips to the free throw line or a couple more twos, paint, whatever it is. So There it is.
You should have said 50. That would have been fun. Like, he's going to match his scoring total from the Seattle Pro-Am.
And then just chug a glass of Wolves Kool-Aid and jump out my window here. That's it.
Those were good. No, I think we're on the same page.
50 minutes of Wolves Kool-Aid drinking here. I don't know what more you guys want from us at this point. My God. If they start 0-4 and the target centers look like a disaster, I guess we'll just re-rack all of these terrible takes from this preview episode.
Yeah, we'll have Marlboro Reds will start sponsoring the podcast because I'll be smoking cigarettes. I'll be so stressed out.
Amazing. And then so we're talking about like our schedules are a little bit wacky next week. We're both kind of traveling for different reasons, and so we're probably going to fire up we're going to expand this show to 2 days a week. It would likely be in like a week and a half. So maybe the week of the week of the second week of the season. And so as part of that, at least 1 day a week, it'd be great to have sort of a feedback section of this show where we just take people's comments from the YouTube channel or Twitter, or you can always hit us up through the Score North app. There's a feedback application in there. And then we can just kind of devote a chunk of the week to answering people's questions about basketball, life, whatever you guys really want. We can be your therapist if you want. We're here for you.
As you've said before, like the response to this podcast, which was just something fun you and I wanted to do, has been fantastic. I always think that this is the best fan base in the world because of the Eminem reference. Like, they've been through the mud, and they deserve all the good stuff now. So yeah, I created like Flagrant Howls on Twitter. So send questions to that. Phil and I will we'll respond. We'll kind of start to bring these questions together and discuss them. Because like you said, this is a lifestyle podcast, and we want to have the lifestyle, not just you and I, who are having a lot of fun, but let's bring other people in and other opinions, and it'll be a good time.
Amen. All right. That's a wrap on this week's episode of Flagrant Howls. We are on the record, 50-plus, 55-plus wins, some all-stars, and some other general Timberwolves Kool-Aid chugging here. Kyle, Phil, we'll see you guys next time.